Hello, this is a video about EverQuest role-playing game, and today we're just looking at the player's handbook. And this was published by Swords and Sorcery and Sony Online Entertainment, and it came out in 2002. So why I wanted to talk about this is there's not a ton of content about this particular game. This is, in a way, this is just kind of me showing you the book. It's not really a commentary from someone who has played it, but it amused me, and I just thought it was kind of worth sharing just for the reason I said that there's just not a lot of content on this particular game. Maybe for a good reason, I don't know. But this is, so this came out basically, this to me is kind of nostalgic in a way because it came out at the kind of the nexus of the millennium. It came out sort of just after third edition had come out in that D20 rule system under the open OGL, open gaming license, which enabled people to make third-party content for official Dungeons and Dragons. So in other words, a company could use the mechanics and the rule systems that were introduced in official third edition Dungeons and Dragons at the time and use that for the basis for their games to either be compatible with D&D or be its own thing. And this is kind of at the intersection of this. So this is coming out in 2002. We're still under the 3.0 version of Dungeons and Dragons rules. It's the turn of, it's the millennia. The millennium's just sort of happened. The 90s are over. We're getting kind of into the online world of multiplayer games. EverQuest at the time was a fairly popular, in fact, probably one of the earlier, I haven't done my research on this, so don't quote me on this, but I imagine it was probably one of the earlier massively multiplayer sort of experiences. I remember in the 2000s, so I was a teenager when this came out, and I remember I would get PC gamer mags because I was into PC gaming, and it would advertise EverQuest, and it had there's a, I don't know, I'll see if I can find it in the book, but there's an image and it has all the EverQuest characters, or the types of characters that you can play. And I remember just thinking that looked amazing, and this came into my possession relatively recently. And so I just wanted to give a bit of background context of how this game was situated, and the fact that's kind of interesting that this was something that Sony put out and they turned it into a tabletop experience. I find that quite interesting. So enough rambling. This is the world of Norath. You've got these 4 or 5 different islands, and each island is sort of themed in a way. Each island has different areas. So there's an area where the dwarves live, and an area where the dark elves live, and so forth. And we'll jump into that in a bit more detail in a bit. But it's quite a nice map. I think the cartographer, whoever did the cartography on this, did a good job. It's quite cool. To me, even with the benefit of a more modern legacy of role-playing games behind us at this point, I still think that this holds up pretty nicely. There's some cool iconography and some cool locations to explore. And I never played EverQuest, so I don't really have that memory or that nostalgia around actually playing the game. And so maybe if you do, and you do have fond memories of playing EverQuest, this could be a way to relive that to some extent, and you probably have much more of an idea about the world and everything than I do. So yeah, you can see here they're doing this under open gaming license. It's copyright 2002. So essentially what you've got is the book is creating a character. It gives you a list of the different races that are available, so barbarians, dark elves, dwarves, erudites, gnomes, and so forth, ogres, trolls, wood elves. It then gives a list of classes, so dedicated spellcasters, and you have kind of the classic D&D ones, but you've also got an enchanter, a necromancer, a shaman, hybrid classes, beast lord. So some cool variety compared with, say, 3.0 D&D. It utilizes skills, it also has feats. If you know 3.0 or 3.5, this is going to be fairly familiar territory. It does have kind of a unique magic system, so that is a difference. You have, section on adventuring, combat, and so forth. Then there's also some monster books. There's a monster book that came with it that, I think there was 3 initially. There was a monster book and kind of the equivalent of a DM guide. But this is the only one I own. I don't own the others. But I just thought people may want to have a look at this, what this looks like, and what you're getting yourself into if you were to purchase a copy online. So it tells you a little bit. I like that it sort of opens with a bit of lore, and if you don't know anything about the world of Norath, which I don't particularly, it's a great intro into, it gives a bit of a background, a mythological background into what's gone down in this area, in this the environs of Norath, the different ages and what's occurred on different continents at certain times, and it starts explaining Quanos, or however you pronounce that, is the free city, and it's a major one, and so has some interesting art. I don't know, is that a cool piece? That's all right. Not amazing, but certainly not terrible. And yeah, it just sort of tells you a little bit about, this one here, Neriak. It's the birthplace of the Dark Elves. So really starts setting the scene for what you might encounter. Like that to me is a pretty cool illustration. You've got these kind of serpent men leading some, it looks like a slave up a pyramid, and goodness knows what they're going to do to him when he gets to the top of the pyramid. But I don't think they're going to be friendly. I don't think he's going to be. He may not be alive much longer. He looks like he could be a sort of like half orc or something. His teeth are kind of interesting. So yeah, to me that's a really cool piece. And again, some of the art's good, some of it's a bit average. I like the kind of the pastel look to it. I quite like that piece actually. And yeah, there's another one. So I think the different areas that they present do give a bit of an interesting idea of where you might want to start a campaign if you were to play with this, and each does have its own distinct thing. One thing from reading it, the little that I've read it, is I think one potential issue or something that I prefer to be a little bit different with my own sort of fantasy worlds is it's very distinct. Like you have a land of the dwarfs, and you have a land of the dark elves, and you have a land of where humans live, and you have, and of course in the human cities, all the other sort of races decide to congregate there, and it's just a little. I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that. Like maybe I get so just something about it is a little bit too clean. Like why would just dwarves live in one area, and why would elves just live in one area and stuff? I think it just feels a little bit static. But of course, if you were to play this and you were wanting to have it run a game, you could do it however you want. But just as it's presented, I find that aspect a little bit bizarre or a bit contrived, maybe. So yeah, again, spends a lot of time going through the geography, and this is the image that I was talking about just at the very beginning of the video. This image here was always really striking to me, and you just have so much going on. You've got this sort of elf character who's obviously a magic user, and you've got this sort of mystic dude who's looking at her. You've got like an elongated head. You've got some dwarfs and halflings down there. You've got these kind of bigger troll ogre types, dark elf. So you've got a lot going on, and it kind of gives a bit of a sense of the different races and stuff. And I think that's is that Keith Parkinson? So that was 1998, and he's a pretty iconic artist. So maybe it's not surprising that really stuck with me as a teenager. This gives just a bunch of like how to roll up your abilities, and this is just everything that you would expect from a 3.5, 3.0 era game that is using that mechanic. It has all of the abilities. You can actually convert your EverQuest character from online into this system, so it's not actually emulating the EverQuest system, or it is, but it's borrowing the D20 system to achieve that. It's not like it's taking actual EverQuest attribute scores and using them directly. It's using a D20 system to emulate that EverQuest experience, but it gives you that conversion process if you have a character you're attached to and you want to play in a tabletop sort of situation. We get to races here, and again, there's like a lot of races. That part of it is kind of cool. You've got a lot of variety. I think the guy with the elongated forehead that we're looking at before is the erudite, and you've also got your ogres and trolls and Vashir, and it just sort of gives you a bit of an idea around what the racial class list and what favored classes these types of races might like to play and the available classes to them. I like that that kind of, to me, is quite first and second edition, that you'd have these, that, races have this kind of fairly prescribed set of classes that they would choose from. And it goes and describes, the different attributes of a dark elf and the different attributes of a barbarian, and the different attributes of a dwarf, and the different attributes of the erudite. So like barbarians, erudites are related to humans, but while barbarians are brawny, erudites are intellectual, and an intellectual offshoot of their human bloodlines. And so erudites are thin, frail, and weak, but have very powerful minds behind their high foreheads. So yeah, I think that was an erudite that we were looking at earlier. Half gnomes, half elves, halflings, high elves, humans, Iskar. So the Iskar are the reptilian race that we were looking at before, those reptile guys. And they've only recently been discovered by other civilized races. And the history of the Iskar is long and complex. So it sort of talks about them. They're a proud race, made unfriendly and bitter, and seeking to regain their lost glories. And they're very alien to those from the continent and hostile to any who come to see them. So that could be a fun starting point. You could have characters that go into this recently discovered area and experience the Ixar. Actually, it's Ixar, not Iskar. And it gives you their racial abilities. So they've got +4 strength, +2 dex, +2 wisdom, -4 charisma. And you notice that a lot with this particular game, that the ability score adjustments are quite extreme. Some of them anyway, and they've got tough, scaly hides that give them a +3 armor class bonus. But they are vulnerable to cold and ice attacks. And they're not trusted even by other dark races. You've got ogres, and I can imagine ogres are going to have pretty extreme stats. Look at that, +6 strength, +4 con, -4 intelligence, -4 charisma. Okay, so I mean, I don't know if it's balanced, but it certainly has, that +4, -4 thing going on. So but +6 strength is pretty extreme. Although you'd expect that from an ogre, I suppose. Trolls. What else have we got? Wood elves. Vanshir. What are Vanshir? Does it tell you what each of these are? Not really. But you could probably make a bit of a guess. The Vanshir, maybe the cat folk. Vashir, sorry. So Vashir were once the ruling class among several sub-races of feline humanoids. So that is that kind of cat folk type race, which is quite cool. So I guess that's the Vashir there, and that's that reptilian race that we were looking at before. This is very third edition. This thing here, in third edition, you have that lineup of the classes. You have that in the Forgotten Realms setting, and I think you have that in the Player's Handbook as well. So they've emulated that whole racial lineup thing there. Wow, so there's a lot of classes, a lot of races, and finally we get into, and that's not even, that's only a small section of the book, so I'm not going to labor this whole thing. I just want to sort of give a bit of a snapshot of what this book is about and what you could expect if you were buying it off eBay blindly. This chapter is around classes, so it gives you rules for character advancement. By the looks of things, I can't remember offhand, but I think it's weighted a little bit differently than 3rd edition. Without looking, I think third edition had 1,000 XP as the second level. I'd need to double check that, but I think this is a little bit different, the character advancement. So it might take a little bit longer to advance by the looks of things, or at least that initial 1st to 2nd level. Gives some rules for multi-classing. It gives an overview of the different character classes, starting with Bard, and it gives an example character, Altora, the half-elf Bard. There's Cleric, Helwain, the human cleric. There's a Druid class, Moyle, the halfling druid, Enchanter. So the Enchanter commands the minds of other creatures. It creates illusions and animations and modifies others' mental processes, either to augment friends or disable foes. So it's a bit more of a subtle arcane spellcaster. But it probably looks sort of similar to a wizard in some ways. It gives you the saving throws, and it gives you a little bit of the abilities that you might be seeing. We've got so it's the half-elf enchanter. It's got some extra rules for the enchanter class there. And then you've got the magician. So I'm assuming the magician is kind of a bit of a catch-all. So a conjurer, elementalist, summoner, and mage are other names often used in Norath that apply equally well to the arcane spellcasters, most commonly called magicians. That's quite a long sentence. So yeah, it seems to me that this is the generalist. This is the kind of catch-all magician wizard type class. You've got the necromancer, which hopefully everyone knows what a necromancer is. Someone who's dealing with raising dead and dealing with dead things and reanimating them. Tweed, the gnome necromancer. Did we see that image of Tweed? Got a skeleton. Shaman. Wizard. Okay, so the wizard is the undisputed master of evocation magic. What is this? Dark elf wizard. Alluvial. You've got monks, and it's kind of cool that they've given almost an example from the world of what sort of monk or what sort of character class you'd encounter, and they've given sort of a racial flavor to it to if you were wanting to play, an Ixar reptilian dude who is a monk, what that might be like. I think it kind of reinforces the setting and gives you a better idea of how you might integrate that and how you might compile a party of characters who are playing in the EverQuest setting. Got the rogue. Warrior, which I think is basically just a fighter. They've got a whole bunch of options though, so you've got berserking, bonus feat, taunt, weapon specialization, parry, dual wield, double attack, like taunts, certain disciplines. Would you? And maybe if someone was really into this game, but imagine getting to 24th level in this game, how long that would take. Especially if, again, I would need to check that, but especially if the XP is higher than even a 3rd edition game. I don't think I ever got a character that was up to 24th level in 3rd edition. I played heaps of 3rd edition, so I can't even imagine how long that would take in this game. A Beast Lord, So these are the hybrid classes. A Paladin, a Ranger, Shadow Knight. The Shadow Knight combines martial skill with the black arts of necromancy. Although many consider her the antithesis of the Paladin, the Shadow Knight is truly far more than a mere servant of evil gods. She is a horrid merging of the arts of war with a necromancer's foul magic. I'd play that. That's would make a good villain too. So what does the Shadow Knight do? Harm touch. So it causes wounds by touching. Finishing blow. Disease resilience. Armored casting. Unholy steed. Parry. So a lot of these classes have quite a few abilities, and I wonder if that's to emulate the EverQuest experience to a greater extent. Because I think if you had a 3rd edition character, they do get abilities. They definitely have quite a few abilities, but I'm not sure if it's to the same level of this, because that's a lot. You've got basically three pages of abilities, like all of that, all of that, all of that, all of that, and then sort of half the page there gives you starting packages. I really like that they have distributed this again across different races to give that sense of what a different characters might be like if they, Troll, Shadow Knight. We then go into skills, and it has a lot of the similar ones to 3rd edition: Animal, Empathy, Bluff, Escape Artist, Handle Animal, Jump, Knowledge. But I see some others: Trade Skill, Undead Empathy. I don't remember those from 3rd edition. Okay, so this is the master list of skills. Alcohol tolerance. I can imagine if you're doing a game with a lot of carousing, that might be a useful skill to have. Channeling. So some of them are a good chunk of them are similar to 3rd edition or exactly the same, but it definitely has more skills, and there are different, play brass instruments, so it really breaks down the instrument type. Safe fall, sense heading, taunt, undead empathy. Yeah, so a lot of these are basically just 3rd edition skills, but it adds a lot, and that's a heck of a lot of skills. Wow. And for those of you who didn't play 3rd edition, this gives a list of what a class skills. What I think the dot's probably cross class maybe, so you can purchase. You could say you're a cleric. You don't naturally have alcohol tolerance, but you could train in it. Whereas if you are a bard, you cannot take animal empathy. It's not a class skill, so you'd have to multi-class with another class to be able to, say for instance, basically something that has animal empathy. A Beastmaster, say, you'd have to take levels in Beastmaster, or whatever, I think that's what it is, in order to train in that. So yeah, a little bit laborious to go through these skills. That's one of the things I don't miss about 3rd edition. It was just a lot of skills, and all of this is just skills. I'm not going to go through all of this. I might just pick out some cool art pieces here and there, but yeah, a little bit boring to read through that. That's a nice piece. Black and white has some strange monolith or obelisk and some big Ixar statues. Feats, very similar to 3rd edition. I won't go through all of these blow by blow. You've got leadership, which was definitely a 3rd edition thing. chapter 6 description. So this is describing your character. So the 9 alignments, choosing good and evil. It has a bit of a write-up of different deities, and I guess the different deities that are associated with different types of races and classes. Yeah, deities by race and class. You've also got a kind of an expanded alignment system: orderly good, discordant evil, orderly evil. So that's interesting. It's a bit of a departure from a more traditional 3rd edition alignment system, or even AD&D alignment system. You've got a write-up of the different gods that occupy the land, factions. So it seems like that could be a fairly significant part of the game, without delving too much into it. You've got equipment, so it gives you how much it costs to buy a chicken. A lot of this is very, it's like a rule for everything. How's that image? Not bad. That reminds me of 2nd edition artwork, like later 2nd edition artwork, when they revised the covers and they had the black covers. That style is very reminiscent of that. Armors, kind of a mix between that late 2nd edition style and early 3rd edition. That hide armor was really that looks to me really 3rd edition, and even that cloth or padded, whatever it is. See, I go a little bit quicker with this, but some cool images of armor there. This is a heavy book as well. Got to sort of like hold it for 30 minutes, but I think I'll wrap up fairly soon with this one. I just wanted to show you the different images that are through the book and talk a little bit about the magic system. It has mana, and it's quite different. This part of it is quite different from 3rd edition. You've got channeling and recasting and everything. I can't specifically talk to this, but one of the things I did notice when I was initially sort of skim reading this is that the magic system was quite different. You've got songs and rhythms and lyrics and all sorts. So yeah, quite a different type of magic integration, and because I'm not overly familiar with it, I can't really speak specifically to how it would compare with 3rd edition, but that is something that I noticed, at least from a getting a sense of the world or a flavor context. I think it's a good thing to have a magic system that departs a little bit from what you would encounter normally with D&D or whatever role-playing game you're choosing, because I think just having variety, having different ways that people approach magic or the unknown, I think is an important and quite engaging thing to do. Anything that you can do to throw veteran players off. You've got this very kind of fantasy trope thing with D&D where it feels very familiar. A new edition will come out and you already get it because you've got this like a 50-year history of how D&D is supposed to be. And even if you've followed 4th edition and 5th edition and some of the changes that were made there, you can see that ancestry of 5th edition in you can see the ancestry of all these other editions in 5th edition. And it's even with those the differences between editions, it still becomes quite predictable and a little bit samey. And so I think anything that you can do in a game to mix that up and create a bit more nuance and interest and variation and just creativity, I think is a good thing. And the more you can get away from a very formulaic system, which ironically this is very formulaic because it's just, I'm still going with spells like that. The spell section must be extremely long. I'll show you how long. Let's have a look at how long this sort of spell casting section is. I mean, you've got to have a lot of time and willingness to understand a system. That's most of the core rule book there. look at that. That's all the magic. So that's magic and spells. So if you're wanting to play this game, you have to read through that. Another cool piece, and I assume that might be Keith Parkinson as well, but I don't see a signature on it. No, actually, yeah, I think it's been cropped. So yeah, I think it is Keith Parkinson, but it's been cropped. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go through probably every single page and linger on it. It's already been a 30-minute video, which doesn't surprise me because it is a really long book. That gives a pretty good overview of this game, or not even an overview of the game, but just what you would expect if you bought it and wanted to flip through it. I think if you have watched this video to the end, and you now should have a good idea of whether you would want to buy this and maybe run it, or buy it just to have on the shelf as kind of something to inspire you. Quite a cool and very involved character sheet, nice and colourful, a little bit blurry, the print on it, kind of, yeah, not the best quality there. Sword and Sorcery, advertising some stuff, and then it also says what's next in the series. So you've got the monsters, which I talked about before, and then you've got the Game Master's Guide. So as I said, I don't own the other two. I can't really comment on what those are like. And of course it has an advert for EverQuest. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. With over 400,000 active players, it's always easy to go adventuring. All right, there you go. That's EverQuest role-playing game, Player's Handbook. Hope you've enjoyed this. And if you've played this, let me know. I'd really be fascinated to hear from people who have actually had experience playing this game and whether it was any good, what you thought about it. Or, you could even comment on whether you think this looks interesting or up your alley. For me, it's very much on my shelf. It's just something that I have on my shelf, and I don't know if I'll hold on to it long term. I got it basically for free. I may sell it, I may keep it, but something about it amused me and kind of interested me. So I thought other people might also enjoy having a virtual thumb through of this book. See ya.